rather. I just love it when it says that. Okay, so tonight is kind of going to be a bit more of an introspective session between ourselves. A little look back at where your Aikido journey started, what it was about for you, what it's about for you now, and where would you like to take it? So in a way, we'll be looking at what Aikido's given you, and I hope what you might want to give back. So who would like to start? I can if you like.
Yes.
Okay. So I started Aikido because my elder brother had started it previously and he was starting a club and you need some bodies on the mat. But I stayed because I recognized a philosophy that I kind of had worked out for myself as to the way I wanted to live my life. And there was also a curiosity about things like unbendable arm and unraisable body. I just couldn't work out how those things worked. And it seemed a little bit magical. And I kept going to try and understand. And the honest truth is I still don't understand why those things work. I just knew that they do. And I'm content with that now. The more I got into it, the more I've seen it as a tool really for making a better life, not just for me, but for those around me and for those that maybe want to listen to what I have to say and practice it themselves. And I've always seen it as a journey that extended beyond the mat. For me, it was never just how do I do Nikyo and Ikkyo. It was always about how can I apply these principles to have a better life, I guess. And really that's, I mean, obviously the whole of the last year has been about sharing that with you guys and trying to illustrate how Aikido can be used in all sorts of ways. It's a continuation of that journey into the future. I've been a member of Aiki Extensions as a board member for, I don't know, something like 12 years. And that's been, you know, a similar path. And really to push that forward and see that succeed, broaden the community, broaden the network, and play my part in reconciling the world, I suppose, ultimately. You know, a long way ahead down the road. That is what it's about for me. That is my touch phrase. So in a nutshell, that's it for me. If you've got any questions, you want to quick, you know, we're going to all quiz each other. If you've got any questions, then I'm very open to them, but otherwise we'll pass on to the next person. Marvelous. Go on, Demetra.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
Can you give us a specific in how it makes the world a better place, or how you make the world a better place through your practice?
Okay, how does it make a world a better place? Well, it teaches you to center. And I truly believe that when you're centered, you operate more efficiently in whatever you're doing. You make better decisions. You make less mistakes. You upset less people. So that's a very good starting point. If you follow the principles through, you've kind of got to start in that place where you're centered. You have to extend your awareness out into the world. So on the mat, it's somebody right in front of you. You've got to take on board all the information and you've got to make good decisions to create balance out of chaos. And that's kind of a dramatic illustration of what can happen in life. Usually it's less dramatic than that. But just being aware of what's going on in front of you and taking on board that information means that in your daily interactions, you make good decisions too. So that kind of gets a ripple effect of peace going out was just in your one-to-one relationships, your working relationships, your community, etc., etc. You've always got to respect what other people say. So it's a wonderful tool for learning to listen to other people's opinions, not to agree with it. I don't agree with people attacking me, but there's a reason why they're doing it. So we're trying to understand that and trying to come up with a positive resolution for me and for them strikes me as a very powerful way of dealing with conflict, as opposed to, well, I'm going to get beaten up or I'm going to beat you up. And that doesn't have to be physically, that can be emotionally, can't it? You know, it's very easy to enter that realm. Being empathetic with other people as a natural, putting yourself in their shoes, it's a key rule or principle of Aikido. Well, again, it's just a wonderful way for enhancing relationships, building bridges. And I try to do that in my daily life. You know, I think partially, at least, we have this community because I bother to reach out to people when I get the opportunity, and I bother to bond with the people who show up. So that's really why. I mean, they're just little things, but I feel a better person for it, and I think I can help other people feel more at ease with themselves. Dimitri, do you have a question?
Actually, I had a comment on your first presentation talk. It was just I was positively surprised to hear that since the early years of your training, you already had developed an inner feeling for going beyond Aikido only in the mat, that you already were feeling inside that Aikido is not only for training the mat, that it is not so much of worth if you don't practice it in your daily life. Yeah. And I was surprised because many people, the majority of people, start feeling that after many years of practice, not from the beginning. You know, they start realizing this after many years on the mat. And this is a very positive, very good thing.
Just to say that I think as a young boy, I was very interested in, you know, why am I here? What's the point of it all, kind of thing. And I came up with my own philosophy of what life was about. And that was about fulfilling whatever God's given me, whatever I'm genetically made up of, however you want to see that. And that's been my guide all along. I've never really erred from that idea of that this is the way I want to lead my life. And just Aikido seemed to slot into that so easily. That was it. Coincidence, call it what you will. I don't think I'd have gone searching for Aikido if it hadn't been for Pia saying, come along one night. So yeah, it's interesting how life can take a turn like that, because it's played such a central part ever since.
It seems that what your mind and your heart was in search of, that it just appeared to you and you followed this way, because normally it's what happens when our mind is directed towards a specific way.
Well, maybe in a way that's true. You know, I kind of rejected all major religions because they all fight each other, and that seemed to me to be pretty stupid. I wasn't prepared to accept that any one of them was right, but I kind of believed in something slightly bigger than me as well. And maybe Aikido fits that gap. I still struggle with the idea of spirituality within Aikido, which is why Tu's going to come back and talk about that with us. What he called, what was the phrase?
Secular spirituality.
Yeah. Well, that kind of really rings true with me. So I'm really interested to hear what he has to say on that subject. Yeah.
But before Tu, it was our sensei who first talked about this, right? To all of us, yeah, before.
But he was very obviously, I mean, he did have a religious belief, and the way he presented Aikido was very much bound up in that. So that's absolutely fine. It's just that, you know, I'm not a Motokiyo, I'm not any particular religion, other than maybe trying to join together humanity and be more in balance in the world. That strikes me as pretty good. Anyway, I feel I'm hogging this, and that's probably quite enough about my journey. I'm going to come to you next, John. I'm really intrigued to know what brought you to Aikido in the first place.
Well, accident really, because the year was 1968. The town is the town I'm living in now. The industry at the time was shipbuilding and coal mining, not much else. And I was 21 years old, and I'd just come out of apprenticeship as a stonemason, and I was pretty fit and agile, and I had beautifully keened hands with the working with the stone, and looking for somewhere to work out was difficult in those days, because there wasn't anything like gymnasiums or anything like that. But there was a judo club, and I went there and started to train in judo under two brothers called Harry and Alan Marr, two great chaps, great martial artists, and was doing that for about 6 months. And then one session, I didn't know this, but one session, Dike Chiba walked into the dojo. He'd been sent over here to England to promote Aikido and was based in Sunderland at the time. And he was doing the rounds of the judo clubs to promote the art. And that's my first mind-blowing introduction to Aikido. I was flexible, fit, and he used me as his uke on that session. And I was just blown away by it. And that's the way it's been ever since. That was my first introduction. And what an introduction it was as well with Shihonagi.
So what was it about it that blew you away? Was it the beautiful movement, or the exercise, or the effectiveness of the martial art, or was it something more than that?
Well, there wasn't so much flowing, beautiful movement in those days. It was very martial. It was still very martial.
Right.
But I tended to let it flow a bit when I started to train with other friends. And it was just the beautiful flowing movements of it, and how you could break someone's balance and take them to the ground without using very much effort at all. That really made it interesting for me.
Right.
So really, that's my first step into Aikido over 50 years ago, and I've trained ever since, with only about 6 months off the mat with an injury.
Right. So if my maths is any good, that's 53 years, which is quite a long time.
Yeah.
So you started off very athletic, into the physical, I would have thought, to some degree, into the martial to a good degree. Has it changed for you?
Most definitely. Obviously, I've got older, and I've gone through the process of plateauing many times, when you neither go up or down, which is very frustrating for some. I've gone through the grading system, and it's got soft for me now. I do look more into the art now rather than the martial.
Right. So what does it bring you now?
Much comfort and much pleasure, especially this last 12 months, where I've been teaching 3 lessons a week online to the few people who have joined me. Vitali joins me nearly every session. Right. And I've also enjoyed joining your classes and others, being a student. So this year's been really, really interesting and very fruitful as well.
I get the impression from what I know about you that you're incredibly generous with your time and giving teaching. Why that? Why are you that way? Why is that important to you to do?
Well, in the early days, an old chap once said to me, he was a blue belt in judo. He said, if you know an hour's more, he did Aikido as well. He said, if you know an hour's more Aikido than someone else, then you can help that person. Even if you just got an hour's more tuition or know something else, pass it on. And that's been my my philosophy through my Aikido career, is to just pass it on, and pass it on.
And what do you think it gives people?
Pleasure, I hope. I mean, I've never really had any bad vibes. I've taught many people. People stop me in the street sometimes and say that they've trained under me and I've forgotten them, which is, it's very strange. But it's that's the way it is. Some people say, oh, I used to train with you 15, 20 years ago, and I can't remember them, which is it's weird. So there's a lot of people that I've practiced with and taught.
So this year has been a very different year, and you've opened doors that perhaps you haven't opened before. You've been doing these online classes, and you've been exploring people's ways of thinking about Aikido. How much of that will you take into what you're doing now and play with?
What I've found from teaching online is I have to verbally express myself more than just do the technique and you copy. So it's changed. And since I've been back on the mat for the last, 2 or 3 weeks, that's changed my Aikido, where I'm actually explaining to a greater degree now.
Right. What about the things that you've been listening to? How has that affected what you're doing?
How do you mean listening
So
to?
you've been on lots of people's lessons. You turn up at Gordon's class, you turn up at my class, and I'm sure
Yeah.
there are other people you go to too. How have those changed what you want to present? Maybe
Well, no,
they haven't.
as a student, I always just keep my mouth shut and do as I'm told.
Sure, but I mean, hopefully that you've invested that time, you've taken something from those that you want to bring into your own Aikido. So I'm interested to know what
I've pinched and stolen. I've pinched and stolen for years. If something's out there and I like it, I'll pinch it and stick it in my act.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, John. Linda, can I pass on to you? So why did you start?
Sure, why not?
Oh,
I
Linda.
started on the recommendation of a horsemanship instructor because I wasn't being a very clear leader for my horse, and he thought it would help me find my ground, my center, and it has helped. So I'm not sure how well it probably helped my horsemanship, but then I decided I liked the Aikido better, so so I no longer have horses, but that's how I got started. It was never about self-defense or you know, it sounded like fun. I've always been attracted to the martial arts. I dragged myself, my sister, and a friend into judo in 3rd grade. And I don't know, there must have been a demo at my school. I don't know how I knew about it, but I came home all fired up about how we're going to do this judo class. And so we did. My sister and my friend and I could only train with each other because the boys wouldn't train with us and the teacher allowed that. So that was a horrible experience. And I didn't go back until near the end of high school. I trained in Tang Soo Do for about 6 months because I got angry enough that I wanted to put my fist through a door, and I knew that I had no idea how to punch and I would hurt myself. So I went to learn how to punch things. And then I felt incompetent. That was a tremendous experience. It was really I had an amazing teacher, and it was a very short time, but really a wonderful introduction to how martial arts training could be.
Okay.
And after that, when I went to college, I had to leave that dojo, and there was an Aikido class, and I tried that because I thought, okay, it's a martial art, this will be fun. And all I remember is Kokyudosa. I know we did the class. It was my now husband. It's our anniversary today. Thank you. We signed up for that Aikido class, and the only thing I remember from it is doing Kokyudosa, and that class was the lamest, most boring, pointless thing I did not get it. Many years later, when the horsemanship instructor suggested Aikido, I knew a bit more about it. I kind of understood the basic philosophy of it, that it wasn't about punching and kicking people or doors. That I went around and found an instructor that I just love. Turns out to be the perfect dojo for me. I trained with Dave Goldberg Sensei here in San Diego, and at the time he was under Nato, who I was familiar with from reading. So I found exactly the right spot, and I've been there the whole time. So I started at age 46, if you don't count the one class in college that I didn't get, that I needed to grow up a bit before I could grasp it. So it has indeed been about that that finding myself and not standing my ground in a badass kind of way, but like not being a wuss about saying what I need and saying how things are. And to your point, Quentin, about peace in the world, I think that's a part of it. That's a big part of it. I think a lot of what causes trouble is people not being clear what they want and how to get it, and how to stand for what they stand for. And they feel picked on and pushed around and walked over enough, and they blow up. So that being able to come from a grounded place, I think has an awful lot of power there. And one of the things I did almost immediately is got hurt. I separated the AC joint in my shoulder, taking what could have been a high fall, except I had no idea how to do a high fall, so I just landed on my head. And so I sat out for maybe 2 months while I did physical therapy and let that recover. And I kept coming to class, though. Every time I've had to sit out, unless I'm just sick, I come anyway. I've had a knee surgery and the shoulder problem, and I learned so much. And I was lucky it happened right at the beginning. I was lucky to have that exposure at the beginning. I had to watch class and watch how it was done, and watch the interactions, watch how the teacher led things. Things I might not have had time or brain space to pay attention to if I hadn't been sitting on the sidelines. So right from the beginning, I was watching the teaching. I was receiving the teaching and also watching the teaching. I was watching how my seniors were helping me. I could feel them like leading me through doing the technique, and aha, I see what they're doing there, kind of things. So I always had that other viewpoint watching, and I've always been fascinated with that. And right now, the thing that I'm fascinated with, the technical aspects. I love the energetic self-discovery side of it. That's huge. And one of the things that I'm really focusing on is learning how to teach, and especially adult beginners. I assisted in the kids program for a long time, which is fun and supports the dojo, and the kids were amazing. But and that's shut down right now for COVID. We don't have a dojo. We don't have a kids program. We're training in the park and having a great time of it. But the thing that really fascinates me behind all the actual doing of Aikido is introducing people to it and teaching adult beginners. They have so much potential and they don't know it. And like they don't know what's possible for them at all. Nadeau says, you don't know who you are. Like you don't have enough information yet to know who you really are. And I see that in them, and they're so fragile. Adult beginners are generally a little bit terrified. They get a little bit discouraged. They feel a little bit stupid. They run away. They quit. So anything I can do to to help them stick with it and understand this is a normal experience. Motor learning is different from cognitive. Just because you don't get it right away doesn't mean you're not going to get it. Help reassure them, help them build confidence, and help them, help with the physical training. So I really enjoy that, and I would love to take on like a beginner's class someday. We do teach, all the senior students teach in rotation at our dojo. So I've been teaching off and on since like second Q, and now regularly, but infrequently, because we have one class we rotate through. And so I would love to be doing more teaching, and I'm also doing a lot of writing. and
Okay, so
Aikido is a huge part of that.
Okay, so I've got two questions for you. One
Mhm.
which maybe relates to the writing. You are a copious note taker. Of all these sessions, you are busily scribbling away. Yeah. I have to ask the question, what are you going to do with all these notes?
That's a good question. Sometimes I'm writing insights for myself. So far today, I was doing my list of what am I doing here anyway, and observations from other people, so I can compare like, oh, I hadn't considered that, I can start to look into some new idea. If it reminds me of something, of an experience or an idea, I'll put a little checkbox by it. That's something to write about. Reviewing them to see, just to understand some of the things like the history and things. That's always good to go review people who've talked about their experience training with O-sensei or early Aikido history, just having some facts. I haven't gone through and reviewed anything yet. I'm too busy writing notes. but fundamentally, I think writing helps me organize ideas in my own mind. So if I just sit and listen, and this has always been true in school, in whatever, in reading, if I can't write in the book, I might as well not read it, because but it, yeah, I don't borrow books.
Okay, so the other
I might
question,
borrow a book to see if I want it, and then I'll get it. But if I listen to something, it goes right through, unless I have to organize it enough to maybe turn it into an outline, or like, oh, look, there's 3 key points somebody just said. If I have to think about it enough to manipulate it into some notes, then it can stick.
So the second question is, you were sent along to get better with horses. Okay, and you said, you touched on it, said, well, I think I probably am better with horses, but you saw something deeper in it. So I want to know what it was that you learned that made you better with horses, but did it also make you better with people?
Oh gosh. Okay. So the exact thing, and it was a real struggle for me, was about holding my ground or taking a stand for what I needed without getting mad enough to. So take Ikkyo, for instance. That was a real struggle for me, because you have to get into somebody's center and put them down and hold them down in a firm way. You're not like, oh, please move. You move them. You just move them. And for me, generating that intrusive energy where I'm going to be balanced and you're going down, without having it be like, you're going down, like not having to bring up anger to, you can imagine somebody's like, nice, until they finally get mad enough to say something and they blow up. Yeah, and I didn't typically do that, but that was kind of how I felt physically. So I really struggled with that, being, like, but I don't want to hurt them. I'm not mad at them. I don't want, it's not nice, all that. And what finally got me, because I was struggling with this with my horse and with Aikido at the same time, I would do the evening classes and then drive to the mountains and get my horse out in the dark in the ring and work with him until about 11 p.m. and then drive home and go to work. And it was, I don't know how I ever did that, but I was struggling with the same thing in both places. And on the way up there one night, it finally hit me. I don't know if you've ever seen a veterinary technician work with an animal, but the animal can be like, trying to claw them, bite them, get away. It's chaos and dangerous. And a vet tech will find a way. They'll, grab all their paws and hang on to them. And so the animal is safe. And so everyone around them is safe. And it's never done from anger. There's no, oh, you're gonna hold still or else energy there at all. It's completely done from love. And once I was able to go, oh, like I could do this as if I were a veterinary technician. Like I had that kind of picture in my mind of that sort of controlling someone, controlling the situation, and not having to the no mad enough to part about it, that finally clicked for me. And that has been just huge in all parts of life.
That's a brilliant way to finish, Linda. That's just a fantastic message. Thank you. Andrew, I'd to come to you next.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I want to know how you started, and I want to know where it's taken you.
Right. I was listening to what John was saying at the start. I've got a very similar story to John, really. Being honest, I had a fairly checkered early history. I was brought up in Glasgow, went to school in Glasgow, and at the time where you had the 11 plus in grammar schools, and I found myself in the top set of the grammar school in Glasgow. Much to my annoyance, because I didn't really want to do that. I was not that interested in school. In the early days, I was more interested in the music scene in Glasgow. And we had a number of bands and things going in Glasgow. And some of them have gone on to be semi-famous, I suppose. But I kind of wandered my way through secondary school, only really doing enough to keep me going, not really interested. I think I was mapped out as a A-level and university student, but I wasn't interested in that. So at 17, I left, and sort of like John, I did an apprenticeship in the printing trade. Sir William Collins. I did an apprenticeship as a graphic designer, which I loved. But then, having started work, I thought, right, well, this is silly. I need to try and get some more qualifications and things. So I went along to the local college in Glasgow. This was in 1964. And it was there that I met Aikido for the first time. It was a club that had started in Glasgow. It was really an offshoot of the Hut in London, which in those days was run by Ken Williams. It was a very interesting experience. We were all Q grades. There was no Dan grades in the club at all. We had 2 weekend classes, Saturday afternoon, Sunday afternoon, and we had 3 classes in the evenings. Plus we had various like colleges and things like that. And I tried to go to as many as I could. But, you know, I remember it as happy days. And like John was saying, it was very physical. We were all, well, I mean, I was only 17. So most of them were fairly young. It was fairly vigorous, fairly physical, but not a great deal of depth to your understanding of Aikido. So Ken Williams used to come up every 2 months for a weekend. And so we would go down there the sort of months in between for a weekend as well, which was how we sort of developed. Anyway, to cut a long story short, after doing that for 5 or 6 years, I decided I really had to get some qualifications. So I went to Durham University in the early 70s, and to my horror, there was I couldn't find any Aikido in the area. And in those days, students didn't have cars, so you couldn't really sort of travel anywhere. But I met another friend who was in the next room to me, who did judo, and the university had a judo club, so we went along to that. And so Malcolm occasionally, he was a black belt judo. He occasionally taught judo at the university club. And as we got on, we would do some judo, some Aikido, and so on. And from there, I then went into teaching, school teaching, not Aikido teaching.
Okay.
And by this time, I'd met my future to be wife. So we decided that if we were going to get jobs together, the best place to do that would be in London. So I finished the year before her, and I moved down to London. I was teaching in the very lovely area in the East End of London, in Dagenham, which was very, in those days, very white working class. I did manage to find an Aikido club there, which I practiced there for a few years. I then decided that in those days you get paid extra if you worked in central London. So I moved to another very nice area in Hackney, which is in the East End of London. And I worked in a school there for 5 years. These were all secondary schools. And I continued doing my Aikido where I could. I was also very interested in those days in Tai Chi, and off and on over the years I've practiced Tai Chi as well. Eventually we moved out to Essex, out to Malden, where my wife had got a job in a school in Malden, but I was still working in London. And for 3 or 4 years, I worked for the Inner London Education Authority. And I ran a computerized program for them across the London area. And then eventually I was cherry picked to go and work for Essex on their sort of Records of Achievement project. But after that, I'd had enough of this wandering around, and I just wanted to get back into a school. So for the rest of my teaching career, I worked in South London in sort of Wallington, Carshalton area. I had a secondary school there, and I was there for about 20 years.
So you're telling us your life story.
Yep.
Aikido and Tai Chi seem to be running in the background. I'm
Yep.
interested to know why it was that you stuck with those and how they influenced the choices you made.
Well, I found that the Aikido in particular was particularly helpful in the controlling of myself, particularly as a young teacher in a classroom situation. It was a great help in actually controlling myself, and because of that, being able to control the classes that I was supposedly running. I did start a couple of Aikido classes in the schools I was in, but I think after I left, they kind of dropped away. But kids were generally interested in that. Yeah. Eventually, we moved over to Fleet in Hampshire because my wife's mother, her father had died, and her mother was on her own. So we came over to be with her. Really, I was still traveling into, but my wife was working in. And it was there that I joined up with the Aikido Fellowship. So Ralph, I don't know if anyone's heard of Ralph Reynolds, who was one of the original sort of downgrades. So I was with them, well, still am, for 40 years or so.
So what did you think of Ralph Reynolds?
An interesting character.
Indeed.
Not the easy. watch what I say here, not the easiest of people to get on with, I have to say. An excellent teacher, excellent at his Aikido, a storyteller as well.
Let me put you back onto safer ground and say that, you know, Piers and I have known you for a few years now, and you always struck me as a great investigator. You're very curious about learning new stuff. So where's Aikido at for you now, and where do you want to take it?
Well, again, strangely, sort of like John, I've always taken the view that everybody is better than me at least one thing, and that one thing I can learn from them. And I find that I these days I actually learn a great deal from actually watching beginners struggling with a technique. Because often if you watch them trying to do it, it unlocks a door and you can see something that, you know, you'd never thought of doing it that way before. And you can often investigate that.
So is it just a question of...
It's been interesting, all the online. Yep.
I was just, no, we carry on. You were saying about the online, finish that bit.
Well, I mean, you actually meet a whole range of people. You get listen to what they've got to say, to a certain extent, see what they're doing. And I think, you know, that in itself is quite mind broadening. My one criticism, and again, I'd be careful what I say about the fellowship, is they're fairly closed and they're not really interested in what anyone else is doing, which I think is wrong. I mean, I think out there you can learn from everybody. You might not agree with everybody, but everybody's got something that's worth looking at.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Andy.
So, I mean, in the future, I certainly in my teaching, I like to think that I can bring things from all different traditions.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Dimitri, I'm going to pick on you now. Let's stick with another person who does Tai Chi and Aikido. So I've known you for a few years now. What made you start in the first place, and which came first, the Tai Chi or the Aikido?
Oh, it was the Tai Chi that I had begun many years ago. Like I began Tai Chi in '92, the fall of '92, and then I began Aikido in 2002. It was when it was accidentally. I mean, I was that I discovered my ex-sensei Yanni, who passed away, in a dojo. It was my brother who had invited me, like your brother had invited you, you know. And my brother's not practicing Aikido anymore. That's strange. It was him, my brother, who first invited me, and I joined. In the beginning, it was awkward because even though I had been training in Tai Chi already for 10 years, the movement there were some similarities, but the movement and the techniques were quite different. You know, there's no pinning and things like that in Tai Chi, and there's no falling down. But as the years went by, I found more and more similarities, and up to now, I really feel that for me, for my training and my personal growth in this, they're both complementary inside me. Like my Aikido has helped my Tai Chi become better, and my Tai Chi previous experience is helping my Aikido. So both of them, I think I'm lucky to be practicing both of them.
Okay, so you just used the key phrase, personal growth. How does it give you that?
Yeah, because you see, since my early adult years when I was living in the US, life happened in such a way. When I was a student in Chicago, living alone, my parents were in Greece, and I had been attacked many times. Chicago is a very dangerous city, and I was quite naive. I didn't know where the dangers were. I thought that I could trust anybody, everybody. So I had been attacked many times. Sometimes just, you know, to steal my bag, or I had been attacked with a knife twice, with a gun. And at the age of 19 to 20 years old already, I had been attacked many times. And there was something inside me. Because up to that time, I was not afraid. I remember very well that the time I was attacked for the first time, I was not afraid. I had no sense of fear at that time, at that age yet, and I had no sense of danger. So I'm lucky that sometimes it could have cost my life. So I'm lucky to be alive from those times. And then I remember once when I was around 20 years old in Chicago, it was night and I was returning home. And after many attacks, then I took the decision at that time, and inside my pocket in my jacket, I was carrying a knife. And it was like this flip-flop knife, you know. And I had a knife in my pocket, and I said, in case that somebody attacks me again, I will hit. But I was training myself that I would just, you know, hit somewhere where it's safe when you don't kill the other person, you know, arms or legs, or never the chest area. So it was very strange because it was like a mantra. I was holding the knife and walking in the dark towards home, hoping that nobody will attack me again. And I was keep repeating in Greek into my mind that, God, please, don't make it so that I won't have to use this knife again. Please make it so that I won't have to use this knife. Make it so that I won't have to use this knife. Because I didn't want to use it, to have to use it. And it was like a miracle, but since that day I was not attacked again. Never.
Okay.
And then what had been like a big question inside me since that time is that how to handle violence without violence. I was 19, 20, but I was searching that. I knew that I didn't have to respond with violence. Even if somebody tried to kill me, I wouldn't, would try to get away without killing them or just hurting the minimum, just to run away. So through the years, my main question in the training and what keeps me training is that how we human beings can learn and train ourselves to act not from out of compulsiveness and instinct and go beyond that, go beyond compulsiveness and instinct in our actions. And that takes a life training and lifetime training. So this is what really keeps me going in Tai Chi and Aikido. And it's wonderful because even during those difficult COVID times, I find it so enriching because during all those online sessions, international, most of them, I'm learning so much and get to know what other people think and sharing. For me, it has been wonderful this time.
So what is it about those two arts that's helped you deal with violence in all its shapes and forms within and with other people? How have they done that? What is it about the arts, in your words?
Well, before I even start talking about Tai Chi, like Aikido, it has movements that are potentially dangerous. Tai Chi, like Aikido, has movements that can really damage the other person, even kill. But the both arts, they have this, you have a choice to go beyond that. And in both arts, you experience the potential harm with the body. I mean, you can practice the technique. You can feel that if I follow this technique, I can really make damage to the person. And then during, like with the body, you train in such a way that you go beyond that. You find other alternatives, and you are watching. You are being aware of how your body reacts, how your mind reacts, how your heart reacts to aggression, and the moment that you can go beyond that. And in Tai Chi, for example, we have Yin and Yang movements. So the basic principle is that the harder the attack, the softer you have to be. This is a number one principle in Tai Chi. The more yang the attack, the more yin you have to become in order to handle this. If you're also hard, you lose.
Okay. So does that apply, can you apply that when maybe you get into a row with your partner and he's shouting at you, do you become gentle?
This is like, well, through the years also, I have learned that being able to handle an aggression on the mat or in whether through Tai Chi or Aikido does not necessarily mean that you're automatically able to handle a verbal aggression. It takes the same amount of training. So for me, and I had discussed this with friends and students sometimes, it was so much easier because of years of training to handle an attack either with Tai Chi or Aikido than to handle a verbal attack. It took me, I'm still struggling with this.
So for me, the practice on the mat gives me the tools to practice off the mat.
Yes.
Yeah, you're right. It's a lifetime's journey and you never quite get it right, but you know,
but it takes training. Yes,
yeah,
it takes training.
Speed the journey up if you're mindful of the principles which can be applied in all situations.
But after so many years, I can say with confidence that it's so much easier to handle like verbal attacks and malicious people while keeping your center and staying soft. Yes, it's a lot easier.
Yeah. Thank you, Demetra. Joe, I'm going to come to you because verbal Aikido is springing in my head, and that naturally now links me to you. So where did you start? Why? Where's it taken you? Where do you want to go?
Can you make one question at a time, please?
Sure.
No, I'm kidding. No.
Why did you start?
Yeah. Well, I saw that, saw demonstration, and I said, I just want that thing for me. I didn't know what it was about, nothing, but the beauty and the fluidity of the movement really caught me with everything. I just moved from inside. And then we started, and actually I was talking to a friend today that everything that keeps happening after I started, I always take it back. Yeah, I need to take that to Aikido or vice versa, but kind of in architecture, in dancing, in Kinomichi, in the formative psychology, everything brings me back to Aikido. In my relationships, and also when I think about my life before Aikido, there was something already there. Kind of in my architecture thesis, I was studying Japanese architecture, the space this in and outer space relationships. When that happens, just like two people cross on the street, a space is created between them. So there was something there. I went to a lecture a while ago with my kindergarten teacher, and she was talking about Aikido. So my infancy, I have something that, and what I really remember about that lecture that she teaches, it was about the caring of other people. So we learn how to take care of each other since we were a child. And Aikido is about that. You just blend with another, you take care of your body, you take care of each other's body. So for me, it's a really huge thing. Also related to Linda, I used to ride horses for about 15 years and learning how to blend with the horse, to respect the horse. And the kind of sports that I used to do with the horse just took me out of that because it wasn't a harmonious sport. So as much as I was doing that, I said, no, this is not right. You know, a horse should be on the pasture, not inside of a barn closed, and not jumping fences and, you know, the competition and all of that thing just took me away of that. So, and also thanks to Linda, I'm reading Mark Rashid books right now, and it's everything there. It's been so special. I was also actually where it's leading me. I was talking to another friend today that he's an Aikido friend, and he was telling me about his kids that, well, they're not going to school, and it was a great part of their lives that they learn how to be in relationships, they learn how to be socialized. And then I thought, well, from your home, you can give them careness, kindness, love, support. You can give everything for them 24 hours, 7 days a week. It's free. And you just, it's not a certain thing that the school is gonna give that to them. So they might have been the greatest education ever, but if you can bring that to them today when they become adults, just I don't know who else said about, actually Linda said about teaching young adults. I got here with, I don't know, 35 years old of an automatic behavior that I'm dealing every day, mostly with Aikido. So if we bring that things and share this love, care, respect, kindness to everyone, so they can be like that with themselves and then to their other, to their surroundings, to their relationships. I think it's, I don't know, could be a good goal for me, and working with everything. So I don't know, part of what's going on today actually. And also you just said about the verbal Aikido, it's kind of, our words are very powerful. So just like we could reach places with the words that it's kind of unexpected, unbelievable, and just like Aikido. So it's kind of, they could be kind of invisible, the way that they reach the other person. So it's really profound, that work. And it just amazes me more the capability of where Aikido can take us. It's kind of endless. So looking forward.
Yeah. So I always say that you can substitute the word life for Aikido, and I think you've illustrated that beautifully. Thank you.
Yeah.
Errol, can I come to you? Because I'm obviously I want to know where you started your story, but you're working in a country that has lots of issues going on, and Aikido seems to be a powerful tool to bring to that sort of scenario. So tell us more.
So you want me to start at the end or the beginning?
Well, you can start where you like, but why not at the beginning? It's always a very good place to start, as the song goes.
Well, just on that point that you just mentioned last, a funny thing happened to me in my dojo quite a few years ago. I had a class where we had a mixed class. There were Israelis and Arabs training together. And one particular guy who was an Israeli came up to me after the class and says, "How can you train Arabs? You know, you're teaching them all your techniques." So I said to him, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? He learns Aikido, and then what's going to happen? He's going to come and face an Israeli, and nothing will happen because they're both waiting for the other person to attack. I said, that's a perfect thing to teach in a country like Israel, of which he sort of stood there and went, oh. So, I think as far as something to teach in Israel, when you're teaching people how to fight, how to deal with conflict, I think Aikido is like a unique and very valuable thing to teach. As for my background in Aikido, I was always interested in philosophy and psychology. I come from a family of teachers, so always around the dinner table there would be conversations about philosophy, psychology, etc., etc. And I learned from a very early age that talk is cheap. You can say a lot of things when it comes to philosophy and psychology, but it doesn't really affect you internally. So I was always looking for some way of experiencing the philosophy, not keeping it purely what's the word I'm looking for? Purely academic. you know, you wanted to actually experience it. So when I got to university, there was a lot of different activities which were provided at university, and there's a lot of martial arts, a lot of physical activity things that you could do. So I started trying all the different martial arts. I did Tang Soo Do for just over 3 years, which was like a full contact martial art, which I really liked. And one of the main reasons why I stopped doing it was because there was nobody training after the age of about 30, because they all got so badly injured, they had to stop. And I was really looking for something I could continue a lot later. But I loved the physical part of it, and also the philosophy was sort of balanced with actually doing it. You know, you could say all you wanted to, but if it didn't work on the mat, to me, it was kind of useless. So after doing Tang Soo Do, I did Kung Fu for a couple of months, but I didn't like a teacher, so I kept on looking. And then purely by accident, I found a little ad about Aikido. I phoned up and they said, you know, can I come to class? And the guy goes, if you want to, you can. And I said, well, can I train on the mat? He goes, if you want to, you can, but you know, we recommend that you watch it for the first time. So I remember I went to the class, and you know, coming from a full contact martial art, I was quite confident in most things when it comes to physical fighting. So I went straight onto the mat, and I was just floored. I was physically taken down to the ground within the first technique, and I said, oh, this is interesting. And I kept on doing it because it basically had all the things I was looking for. I found it in Aikido in a physical format, which is something which I was looking for, and something I really liked. And because I loved being thrown and I could move and I wasn't scared about falling, a lot of the higher black belts liked training with me. They liked throwing me because all the techniques would work when they're training with me. So I learned very quickly, and I learned everything from the side of uke. So I kept on doing it since mid-80s till now, basically with no breaks.
So if I were to ask you in essence what Aikido has given you, what would be the key things that you would want to relate?
It's a hard one. It's changed over the years. Originally, I did Aikido because, I mean, originally I was looking for a translation of philosophy, which basically said you can meet aggression with softness. You know, and softness overcomes hardness, and it was a really nice philosophy, and it sounded really good, and you can talk about it, but I had no way of actually creating a physical situation where that would happen. And in the other martial arts that I did, it was force meeting force. And if you, like Tang Soo Do, you walk on a straight line. So if somebody attacks you, you walk on a straight line through your opponent. So force meeting force, and basically the greater force wins. And I was looking for something that showed that softness could overcome force, aggression can be overcome by non-aggression. And I found Aikido, and Aikido basically showed you that you could meet an aggressive opponent using soft techniques. And you can face an aggressive person and have a way of absorbing the aggression and then giving back calmness. And basically, whenever I was doing my techniques in Aikido, that's been my guiding point. How can I change this nice ideas of philosophy and all these kind of things and do it in a physical format? And you know, that's the way I've always taught Aikido. You know,
so that's obviously a real touch-based point for you, and it's obviously done that for you. But in a few short sentences, what has Aikido given you beyond that, the discovery that you found what you were searching for? If it might be nothing, I don't know.
What do you mean? What have they given me?
How has it changed you? What are the key lessons that you've learned from it?
I don't know. I've been doing it such a long time. It's hard to tell how it's changed me. A lot of people say to me, I'm relaxed and I'm calm and I don't get, I don't get agitated quickly. I attribute that all to Aikido, because I've been doing it so long, it's become part of my character. My character has become part of my Aikido. It's hard to know exactly where one stopped, when one started, where one began and where one finished.
Fine.
What I am today is largely from Aikido because I've been doing it for so long and it's been such a part of my life. And it's also because it's a physical form. So I've learned from doing as opposed to having some sort of lofty idea.
Sure.
It's been sort of, because I've been doing something, the doing influences and molds what I am to a large extent without me having to think too much in depth about it.
Sure. Okay, well, that sounds like a pretty big gift to me. Okay, so I'm going to ask a question of you all here. So it's not, I haven't asked you yet, it's not that I'm not interested. I am very interested. It's just, you kind of just got to get through people. And so we've gone as we have. I would like to hear everybody's stories, but we're never going to get through it by 8:30 and we're now at 8:10. I haven't got anything lined up for next week. If you're okay with it, I would like to hear from the people who haven't yet spoken next week. I think that would be, I'd like to continue the dialogue, really. It's interesting to just know your stories and know what you've got from it. So does that sound like a plan?
Yep, sounds good.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, great. Then I'm going to open it up just for a few final observations, comments, etc., and get you to commit and promise to be back here next week to continue the dialogue. Particularly those of you who who didn't go through this tonight. Definitely want to hear your stories. Okay, so any comments, observations? Come on, Molly, you must have something for me. Oh,
It's so interesting hearing everybody's perspective, and the commonalities and the differences. And some people get like, "Oh yeah, that rings true for me," and then some was like, "Oh yeah, I hadn't considered that."
Yeah.
Looking forward to next week.
Good. Molly, anything?
Well, I was just going to say, so most of it, that as I'm listening to everybody and how we started this art, when you say Aikido is life, and that's the thing that runs through everybody's conversation. It's a structure on which we flesh out our lives. It's a way of being. And for me, it's life. It just is.
Yeah.
I can't when I try to think of the before it was discovered, for me, and I just see how it's colored everything since then.
Yeah.
Right into this present moment. Marvelous.
We look forward to hearing the details next week. Although we do know your story a little bit, obviously. Okay, gang, unless one final comment from anybody if you want it. Otherwise, I thank you all for participating and listening and telling your stories. It is rich, and I look forward to hearing more next week. So have a good one.
Bye.
Yep. Everyone. Thanks, Quentin.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Goodbye. Bye.